Now, in the previous lesson, we talked about the different quadratic expressions. That if it had 2 terms, it was a binomial. 3 terms, it's called a trinomial. Sometimes you have ones that are special. And we talked about the different types that were special. The difference of 2 squares, where a squared minus b squared equals a plus b times a minus b. We also talked about the perfect square trinomials. A squared plus or minus 2ab plus b squared equals a plus or minus b squared. When we have a problem like 4x squared equals 25, and we want to solve by factoring. Whenever you want to solve by factoring, you have to get everything to one side. It doesn't matter if I move everything to the left or I move everything to the right. But I usually like to move everything to the side where an x squared is going to be positive. So my x squared's on the left, it's positive. I'm going to move the numbers here to the left. So I move this to the left, what happens? 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. I have a binomial. When I have a binomial and I have to factor, is there anything that they both have in common? A 4? 4 going to 25? No. Since nothing in common, now I'm going to look, can I take the square roots? What's the square root of 4x squared? 2x. What's the square root of 25? So far, so good. It's a negative in the middle. Yes. Because I have square root, negative in the middle. It's the difference of squares. 2x minus 5, 2x plus 5.
What did we do?
Now, once we have this factored, we need to solve. Now, this is off the side in your head. What you're really doing is taking each one of these that have an x. 2x minus 5 equals 0. And we're solving it. What do you do first? Add 5 over. So 2x equals 5. Now what? Divide by 2. So x equals 5 halves. What we talked about last week is if this was a minus 5, we put plus 5. And if there was a number out front here, you take the opposite of this divided by this. What's the opposite of this? Negative 5 divided by this. Those are your answers. Now, instead of writing x equals 5 halves and negative 5 halves, you're also allowed to write it plus or minus 5 halves. These mean the exact same thing. For this problem, we want to solve by factoring. We have 18x squared equals 48x minus 32. What should our first step be? You need to get everything to one side. Because my x squared is positive over here, I'm going to move these two over to the left. 18x squared minus 48x plus 32 equals 0. It has to be set equal to 0. You have to move everything to one side. And we usually want the side that has the x squared to be positive. Our first step should be what? Before we find square roots, what should be, no matter what type of problem we try to do? What, do they have anything in common? How many times 6 go into 32? It doesn't go in evenly. 2. How do you know 2 goes in all of them? Because they're all even. If they're all even, 2 has to. So I'm going to divide everything by 2. 18 divided by 2, 9. 48 divided by 2, 24. 32 divided by 2, 16. The only thing I've done is factored out a 2. Now once you've factored something out, now I start looking, is it special? Can I take the square root of this? So I'm going to write 3x. What's the square root of 16? 4. What's 4 times 3x? 12x, and if I double that, do I get a 24?
No.
Yes. Double of 12 is 24. So minus here, squared equals 0. This one gets you your front number. This one will get your back number. If you double, so 4 times 3 is 12, and I double it, 24. If it's a 24, then it's special. There's a difference between having a difference of squares and a perfect square trinomial. Perfect square trinomial, you have 3 terms that you're working with. Difference of 2 squared, you're only dealing with 2 numbers. These are the ones that give you the squared. This here is really the same thing as 3x minus 4 times 3x minus 4. What can you tell me about those answers? They're identical. They're going to be the same. So really, I only have one answer. What's the opposite of this? 4 divided by this. Your answer is 4/3. That is your only answer. Just to help you understand what that means. If I take this 4/3, I'm going to store it into x. If I use this equation here, 18x squared minus 48x plus 32. I get 0, which is what it should be equal to. Another thing I could do is I could type it into the y equals. 4 divided by 3. I don't need those. I only care about where there's x's inside the parentheses. 18 x squared minus 48x plus 32. When I graph, I just want the 0. I want to find out when is my x 0. It's right at this point, right? Where does it cross at? Does it cross on numerous points? Does it ever go below this line? No. The parabola only touches at one point. And that one point is right, it's 1 point something. To get the calculator to tell me that answer, second trace, I want to know the minimum, or the 0. So 2. Left bound, I'll use there it goes. Negative 10. Buttons don't want to work today. Right bound, I'll use 10. So I'm looking at my entire screen. My guess is it's right around here, which is right around 1. I have a 0 at 1.33333, which is 4/3. I can also use my calculator to check my work a different way. The original problem had this split into 2 pieces, correct? So you had your first piece, and this one was 48x minus 32. So we have here. Now when I graph, there's the first one, there's the second one. It's really close. Let me see what happens if I zoom in. Zoom, enter. The line is going to intersect up here. I'm just going to do second trace. I want to find out where the 2 intersect. 5. First curve, enter. The second curve, enter. Guess, enter. They intersect at 1.33333, which is 4/3. These are ways you can use your calculator to check your work. I want you to try this problem. What should be my first step? Get everything to one side. What side do you want everything on? On the left. So how do I move this? Add 4. X squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. What should be my next step? When we're factoring, what's our first step? Before special. Is there anything in common? They all don't have an x, and they all don't have a number in common. So no, there's nothing I can factor out. Every time we factor, we want to look. Is there something can I take out? No? Now we look, is it special? Can I take the square root? X. Can I take the square root? 2. So far, so good. If I take 2 times x, what do I get? And I double it. Is that what I have here? If that happens, where I square root, take these and multiply and double it. If that equals this, take the sign, throw it there, x minus 2 squared. That is the same exact thing as if you went and just did the parentheses. X and x, signs are the same, both have to be negative. 2 numbers that multiply to get you 4, but add to get you 4. 2 and 2. It's the exact same thing. This one involves a little bit more work and thinking. This one's just knowing that it's special. Square root, 2 times x, 2x, double it's 4x. That's true, so negative, the negative goes here. What's your solution here? X equals 2. And that's your answer.
So is that right?
Sometimes you're given answers and you have to work backwards. We want to write a quadratic function in standard form with zeros of 6 and negative 2. So what we've been doing is you're getting zeros here. We had the positive 5 halves, the negative 5 halves. We want to start with this and work our way up to this. We want to work backwards. So if we have zeros of 6 and negative 2, what would have been the line before that? What line would have been before x equals 6 and negative 2? The factors, the parentheses. How would I write the parentheses? X and 6 I like, and x and 2 I like. How did we go from here to here? X minus 6, x plus 2. Why'd you do that? You always switch them. You do the opposite of what's in the parentheses. So all I've done is I'm working backwards. I put the factors, I substitute in, and I remember that when I go from answer to parentheses, I take the opposite of answer. We're not going to... The 2 is negative, so the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. You always do the opposite of what goes in. Yeah. Because this one was positive, this one was negative. If this was a negative 6, this would have been a positive 6 here. That's just because of what they told us. Now we want to go from this to the next step. What would our next step be? Distribute. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. Negative 6 times x, negative 6x. Negative 6 times 2, negative 12. Only thing I've done is FOILed. Where'd you get the minus 4 from? Negative 2, or sorry, positive 2x and negative 6x is negative 4x minus 12 equals 0. That is your answer. The only thing you're doing is starting at the answer, working your way backwards. Now, that is one possible answer. This one could have numerous answers. The reason why, if I would have thrown a 5 out front here, does that 5 change what's on the inside of the parentheses? Does it change your zeros? All right, let's look. I have x minus 6, x plus 2. There's my graph. I'll make it delete this one. Zoom 6, if you're in some weird view. There's the graph. It crosses at -2, and it crosses at 6. If I take and throw a number out front, then x minus 6, x plus 2. And I'll make this one a darker line so you see it. Now when I graph, there's the first one, there's the second one. So the graph itself has changed a little bit, right? But where do they cross at? The same numbers. This 4x came from these two. The zeros did not change. Having a number out front just changes how it's stretched or compressed, but still has the same zeros. Yep. So if I had a 5 out here, this would have been 5x squared. This times 5 would have been minus 20. This times 5 would have been 60. That would have been another possible answer. But most of you, I don't expect to go further than just doing this. Try this one on your own. Where I'm seeing everyone do this correctly is you know that this is 5 and negative 5. So you did x plus 5, x minus 5. Good. You understood the first step. Then I think everyone distributed correctly. X times x, x squared. X times negative 5, negative 5x. 5 times x, 5x. Here's one of those silly little math mistakes I saw a few people have. What's 5 times negative 5? Negative 25. Some of you accidentally added. This is where I saw the mistake. Are there any other x squareds? No. Now my x's are right here. What's a negative 5x and a positive 5x? 0. There's nothing left. So you have minus 25 equals 0. And that's it. A lot of you had that, and that's good.